get started. Thank you everybody for joining us for our Salesforce DevOps Maturity webinar. I'm Alyssa. I'm the head of marketing here over at Opsera. With us today, we have our solutions architect, Punitha, and Rajeshwar, our lead engineer. I will let them take it from here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. So the topic for today's discussion is Salesforce DevOps Maturity. There's always this question on why and how DevOps maturity is important in the Salesforce landscape. There are huge complex projects that happen within Salesforce when you implement it and so on. But there's always a lag and how do you achieve the speed to delivery, right? How do you get the code to production without very less disruption and in the most efficient and scalable manner, right? That's where your DevOps implementation takes a huge, priority. Now, when I say that, there are always developmental challenges to implement a fully mature DevOps model in any organization. Now, I'm sorry, just a minute. Yeah, some of the challenges which we also see is manual deployments, right? Let's say when you're talking about DevOps, that means it has to be completely continuously integrated, continuously deployment should be happening without or very less manual intervention. Now, when we talk about Salesforce, that's always a bit of a challenge considering all the manual deployments that happen. There are manual steps that's always needed in a Salesforce ecosystem. But in the current state, the way Salesforce is progressing towards implementing DevOps, providing all the CLIs that's available, this is something that is attainable with the help of the tools like Opsera, which is currently in the market to help you attain that particular maturity model in Salesforce for DevOps. One of the major challenges is manual deployments, right? For example, if you're still in chain set and you have a developer group of 12 to 20, then you're always stepping on each other's shoes and overwriting your codes, right? This is one of the major challenges which you see in Salesforce development. Code overwrite, and then also profile and permission set deployment is one of the major challenges which we have in Salesforce ecosystem. And every time there is a production deployment, if you're not into a complete DevOps mature model, then you always have to make sure that all your UAT, QA, all of these orgs are always refreshed time to time, which again brings back to the question, where is the efficiency? The minute you do a refresh, there is a downtime of at least 5 days minimum, if it's a huge complex org, to reinstate into the state which it was already in, right? So this is where DevOps actually plays a major role. And how do you achieve it, right? Some of the things like having multiple release cycles. When you have multiple release cycles, then you have the challenge of making the sync orgs to be in sync, right? And also, maybe Rajeshwar can deep dive on some of the things like security and quality gates, which are not really baked into Salesforce DevOps from day one. It is something which we have to inculcate into your DevOps process. Rajeshwar, do you want to speak a little bit about branching strategy and security and compliance?
Yeah. Salesforce is unique. They have a philosophy of clips, basically, rather than trading. They introduce platform. And love me basically, which this helps in making the application learning process very faster with all these baggage of modern members. And with that, but then every other organization or industry would want a slightly more edge. Writing the code is not really a lot maybe into writing a code. You would somewhere also you want to use writing a particular code, and that's where all those development processes does have to integrate with security and quality and other compliance aspects. So yes, those customers or organizations are pushing for faster releases. We've seen that the organizations basically tend to compromise on the security aspect or the quality aspect of it. And that's where it's very important to make sure that that if that a code that is being, one is to have a proper architecture, second to have a proper compliant code, and to ensure it's free of most of the security vulnerabilities, and also like to limit most of the code vulnerabilities or snares and any major or minor issues that underlying issues that can cause for any vulnerabilities or any sort of performance degradation when you are applications. So that goes into the security or the quality compliance. And onto the branching strategy, there's no one quick solution for any use case that's there. And it's very important to have one is why branching strategy, and I mean, as in why do you need a branching strategy, or in fact, like branching strategy basically comes from the version control. Actually, what's the need of having a version control? This is where it's important, as Punita had mentioned, chances of code overrides are pretty common these days, especially when your organization is doing. So you would want to have let's say if you want to work on a particular project or an application where you're doing more developers, and that's where chances of code overrides are outweighs your guys. And also in case of such scenario comes up, you will have to even basically make sure that you're able to revert back or go to the previous solution in case if there are rollbacks needed. And for all that stuff, it's not just about having code in a version control. It's also about having a proper branching strategy that can seamlessly help you in moving the code. Either between higher roles or having your source of truth be in sync with your Salesforce office.
Yeah, rightly said, Rajeshwar. Just having a version control would not be the it's not the solution to reach a mature DevOps model. A version control with the right set of branching strategy which is what will lead to a mature DevOps model. You could have a version control system, but there are a lot of overrides that's happening. Then it's never going to help you nor the developers in delivering the requirements that needs to head to the production environment. So while we are at it, let's just go to the maturity model we at Opsera talk about with all our customers. We have these 4 stages called crawl, walk, run, and fly. So this is always a path which you as an organization can implement within your organization and make sure that you get the velocity, get the efficiency out of Salesforce implementations. So if you're with change sets, that means there is no right or wrong in DevOps models, but if you're in a change set model, then that's something you will struggle as your implementation asks increase within your organization. Your speed to delivery will definitely take a hit, and your source of truth eventually becomes your production org. So if anything goes wrong in production org, there's no way you can revert it back to any other version of the code. You have to redo your deployments. You have to go back and see what went wrong and do hot fixes. That is going to be a real challenge. And that's where version control actually comes into play, right? So the minute you have a version control, there's always something you can look back on and make sure that if something goes wrong in production, or if a developer wants to take the latest piece of code and start working on the enhancements, let's say, then you have the version control as well as your production org, which is these two are the different sets of truths which you have. And that's your walk stage. When you have different versions of the code in your Git or Bitbucket, and then you have your production org, right? And then you also have your user story management and so on. And you have specific release cycles. So if you have a dedicated release cycle, if you have version control, then these are the basics of DevOps implementation. And then you are at a walk stage, we would say, right? And then how do you get to the next stage, which is implementing the right branching strategy, making sure that your CI/CD tool is automated, start using your SFDX plugins that's available, and then make sure that you have quality gates in place, and then make sure you also have a rollback strategy in place. But when you say that you've truly achieved DevOps is when you have end-to-end visibility of what's happening in your delivery. For example, there's a piece of code that's getting developed by a developer that gets integrated and deployed without any manual intervention, or very minimal manual intervention to your production org. That's when you achieve the true DevOps model in Salesforce. How can you achieve that, right? You would need a set of tools like Opsera, which will help you enable this kind of DevOps maturity. Because in Opsera, we provide the option for audit logs. We have automated pipelines. We also take care of a lot of features like incremental merge for profiles, also take care of merge conflict resolution. The developers are provided with a view where you can actually, Opsera notifies you that this is where your conflict is. Please make sure you resolve the conflict before you proceed, right? There's always if you take any normal version control system and make commits, it's not going to stop you from merging your code. But if you use tools like Opsera, you will always have the screen which will stop you from moving forward. And also having proper gates, security gates, to make sure that you don't have any vulnerabilities, creeping into your production org. This is something very crucial, but most of the time is overseen by several organizations. But I cannot insist more on having this as a quality gate as one of the main things in your pipelines for attaining DevOps maturity. This is one of the critical things which needs to be implemented to make sure your code quality security is achieved when you hit production. There are some other metrics like DORA metrics, lead time for changes. Maybe Rajesh is more of an expert in these aspects. Rajesh, would you like to chime in your thoughts on that?
Sure, Pranita. Again, whatever DevOps maturity flow that we see here, this is something that we have, as Punita mentioned, we have depending on a lot of the customer feedbacks and the way how we've seen the deployment strategies that are being followed across many of the organizations. These are the different phases that we have formed, right? So you have crawl, walk, run, fly, and you can see how between each stages there are some for example, as you can see, when it comes to walk, you have part of automation put in place, and when it comes to run, you have continuous integration pipelines, the automated CI/CD part which is in place, and when it comes and that's where, and also you do have most of your code quality security guardrails put in place as well. That helps you to make sure your higher environments are properly thoroughly validated for any sort of vulnerabilities. And when it comes to the fly, that's where the observability part is also put in, where you're not just deploying your changes or making faster releases. Rather, you're also making sure the speed of your deployment, how well you can identify what basically stops your or lowers your deployment frequency. So that's where Opsera is not just about having a CI/CD platform. It's also about bringing in that sort of observability, that sort of analytics and insights. Plays a key role when it comes to noting down how better you can perform your deployments. So as Punita mentioned, yeah, we do have quite a few analytics and that we have basically incorporated based on the DORA metrics. It starts with how fast you can basically measuring your deployment frequency, how faster you can have your releases, how how your team is slowly incorporating the quality and the security guardrails so that any such vulnerabilities are actually figured out earlier in the process of, let's say, deploying it to your lower environment, maybe QA or UAT, rather than finding it right, before the production deployment. Next is your lead time for changes. How fast are your, for any ticket that is being worked upon, how much of a time is it taking, or is it spending in each of those, your release cycle stages, whether, it's being held in the QA for quite a long time, and figuring out the reason as to why it's taking time, maybe to deploy from QA to UAT, or maybe even from UAT to prod. Is code review or any sort of other conflicts or issues playing a say in increasing the lead time for changes? That's also another thing. Change failure rate. How fast are you recovering from any failures that are happening in your prod environment? Are you able to easily roll back your changes, or let's say even work on identify the one thing is about rolling back, but then you wouldn't but when it comes to production deployments, where especially when you have lot many code and lot many components being deployed, you wouldn't want to miss out releasing our feature right on a earlier node. So that's where you will have to basically ensure that your any failures that are happening, you'll have to basically recover pretty fast and then move forward. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rajeshu. Yeah. So when we speak about DevOps maturity, these are some of the core things which has to be implemented to reach a mature model in DevOps for Salesforce, right? You have the end-to-end visibility, continuous integration and deployment, security code, have a version control with a robust branching strategy, wherein every team, there's a very common scenario in Salesforce where there are multiple projects running in parallel, and you have to make sure that each team does not override the other team's piece of code, and there is always a common component. Now, when we speak about it, this is how you have to make sure your branching strategy is robust so that you do not get into that kind of a situation. Now, package development model is one of the options to overcome this as well. Talking about shift left, this again is having your integrations to either automation integrations to Provar, Selenium, and so on, to make sure that the minute the code is deployed, you have a regression suite running for you automatically through Opsera pipelines. Then, of course, you need to make sure you have a backup and recovery option, wherein all the metadata components are being backed up into a repository so that you can always go back to the repo and make sure that you push it back to production in case something goes wrong in your current deployment. And also having a single CI/CD platform, which will take care of all your needs, right? For example, when we talk about shift left, it's your Selenium or Provar. And when you talk about code and security, we have SonarQube, we have Apex PMD, and so on. Now, need to make sure that you have baked in all of these into a single pipeline. And this is possible using Opsera. In a single pipeline, you have all the options to make sure that you are executing and reaching that kind of efficiency using Opsera pipelines. Now, this is just a sample pipeline which we recommend to most of our customers. You have everything is baked into Opsera easily, right? When we tell it's a pipeline, it's an orchestration tool. Using point and click approach, you create multiple steps and the tool takes care of creating your feature branch, doing your Git scan. When I speak about Git scan, it's an Opsera specific offering which we have, which takes care of identifying vulnerabilities across your repo. And then we have the Salesforce validate step, and we have so many built-in features like metadata transform, which takes care of changing the email IDs from one org to another, right? For example, you're deploying a workflow alert or some email templates or email alerts. You need to make sure that the email ID in each of these metadata components are changed every time there is a deployment to higher environments like your UAT or production, so that it's tested accordingly. Now, in a given scenario, it's generally a manual step. but Opsera takes care of transforming that metadata and adding the right email ID into that particular email alert or in custom label or any related metadata component. Then we also have the ability to run code scan during your deployment span, where in case there are vulnerabilities, you are notified using Slack channels, Microsoft Teams or Google Chat, any of these messaging tools, which are easily integrated to Opsera out of the box. You do not have to set up anything. You do not have to build an integration from the scratch. All of this is built in and baked into Opsera pipelines. Then we also have the backup option where you will be able to back up your metadata right before the deployment so that you have the backup code base in case something goes wrong in production or UAT, you have the rollback strategy in place. And unit testing is something very critical, right? Having the test class coverage for the deployment you're doing is very, very crucial. But there are also scenarios where only selected test classes are run instead of running automatically any feature. Let's say there is an Apex class being deployed. There could be only one main test class that is getting covered, but there are also relevant test classes which are covering that particular Apex class. So Opsera provides auto-include test class, wherein that can be incorporated into your pipeline, and any Apex class which is being covered by several test classes get included in your pipeline automation. And if there is failure, you are notified about that particular failure. And then at the end, you have the gated approval, depending on the code scan results, which is available within the platform, depending on the backup, depending on the test class coverage. As an approver, you have complete visibility to give a go ahead for the release or not go ahead with the release. And this could be in any of your environments, right? So this is how a sample pipeline looks like in Opsera. So when I say pipeline, then there's this question, how difficult it is to create this. It's point and click. There is no code involved in setting up this kind of pipelines in Opsera, and everything is baked in, and all the tools are provided as offerings like Selenium, Crowbar, Code Scan, SonarQube, Apex PMD, Slack integration, Google Chat, and so on. So all of these are available within the platform. All you have to do is click on some buttons, set up the pipeline, and you're ready to go. With that, I would like to conclude the DevOps maturity with one line saying, you can achieve DevOps maturity in Salesforce, not just by using CI/CD, but also a tool which offers all these features for you to take it forward. Also a set of processes which will help you implement the DevOps, and also a best practice of development, right? Which is making sure your developers follow best practices like having a trigger framework and so on. So these are very crucial items which needs to be monitored and implemented to achieve complete DevOps maturity in your organization.
Awesome. Thank you. We had a question from Rob. He said, being new to Salesforce, can you provide documents or links / articles that talk about manual migrations with Salesforce and then the Opsera offering? Yeah, we'll definitely follow up with you by email with all the above, but do you want to add anything with that, Puneetha, Rajesh, or just anything anecdotal to Rob's question?
Yes. Rob, when we talk about manual migration, it's always a challenge. I am not sure which tool you are currently using. If it is chain set, then your lead time to production is always lower, and there's always a challenge in code override, profile deployments, and so many challenges you're going to face with manual migrations in Salesforce. So Opsera will help you mitigate those challenges seamlessly. It's something which we as a tool want to give to Salesforce customers, where all these pain points are addressed, be it profile migration, code override, linking your code base to DevOps, version control, building your repository, cloning your repository. All these are out of the box in Opsera, where it's all point and click. You do not have to take care of anything. So yeah, I just wanted to add those things.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hope that
just to
answers.
just to add on top of it, like we have we have like almost 60 to 70 tool integrations, as Punita mentioned. We have integrations with Slack, Zoom, GChat, Teams. Again, that's on the notification side of things, but we do also have integrations with a lot of SAST tools like SonarQube, CodeScan, Apex PMB, Code Analyzer, and then also with testing tools like ProVar, Selenium, and a lot more basically. So as I said, yeah, we have quite a lot, huge list of integrations that we have, and definitely it can be, the DIY is totally possible, but then it takes time. It takes resource, it takes time, it takes a lot of, money as well, to basically have it, and not just that, the continuous integration side of things, but as I said, like we have plethora of KPI metrics and a lot of tools to identify, as I said, DORA metrics, and also on each of the integrations that we have a set of, quite a lot of list of KPI metrics that will help you to basically identify and then fasten your release process.
Awesome. Thank you both. Any other questions from the group? Any advice from either one of you, Puneeth or Rajeshwar, that you would give to anyone who's looking to embark on kind of this adventure of Salesforce DevOps? Just clean up top to bottom. Any advice you'd give to somebody who's looking to jump into that world?
Yes, it is a huge project if you embark on this journey, but it's definitely very rewarding because having continuous integration and achieving DevOps maturity not only implements a process, but also your customers are going to be happy with it because your lead time to production is going to drastically reduce. And there's also, from a compliance and security perspective, your organization is going to be more secure. Where if you do not have a proper DevOps model built in, you do not have the security checks. With the current state, there is always a risk of exposing your code base or your code being exposed to vulnerabilities and so on. And there's a huge risk involved. And you definitely have to get on this journey, which might be challenging, but the rewards are much more better than the whole journey.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Puneeth and Rajeshwar, always amazing hosts. Thanks, everybody. We'll